A license was showing property in 8-unit complex to a prospective tenant using a motorized wheelchair. The tenant wanted to rent a unit, install grab bars in the bathroom, and lower the door handles. The landlord, A, can allow his tenant to make these modifications and pay for them to be made. B, can refuse to the tenant, the individual, because it would devalue the property. C, must allow the tenant at the tenant's expense to make the modifications but cannot require restoration at the end of the lease. And D, must allow the tenant to make the modifications at the tenant's expense but can require, by the terms of the lease, restoration of the property.
D.
Yep. Correct. Ding, 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 ding. Where's the mouse at? Bruh. Put that down. Oh, okay. Which of the following is the best description of a fee simple estate? A, ownership of the property that extends to the period of a person's life. B, the most complete ownership in property that one can obtain. C, interest in a property for which a party to the transaction has been paid a fee. Or D, interest in a property for which the leasehold estate is supported by consideration.
Read it again.
Which of the following is the best description of a fee simple estate? Ownership of a property that extends to the period of a person's life. B, the most complete ownership in a property that one can obtain.
B.
Okay, bet. That's good. Correct. A licensee plans to send out an email offering his services. According to the CAN Spam Act, the licensee must include the brokerage firm's name in the reply to line, email individuals who have given prior permission to be emailed, hire a company to market service, or D, tell recipients how to opt out of receiving a future email.
B.
B?
D.
D. Correct. This is one's a lot, so pay attention.
Skip all the math ones.
Okay. The owner of an apartment building has just assigned an agreement with a real estate firm. Has an agency been formed? A, no, because an agency is formed only with listing agreements between a seller and a real estate licensee. B, no, because an agency with a licensee is formed only in situations of buying and selling, not managing real estate. C, yes, because an agency is formed whenever one party delegates to another to the right to act on his behalf in certain business transactions.
C.
Correct.
Agency is like a power of attorney.
The most typical purpose of a deed restriction is to ensure that the property will not become encumbered. Is it encumbered or encumbered?
Encumbered.
I think it's encumbered. Encourage varied uses of the property. Control future uses of the property.
Control future uses of the property.
Okay, correct. The managing broker requires his licensees to mention a particular lender to buyers. The broker has a financial interest in this particular mortgage lender. Which of the following should the licensee recommend to the buyers? A, use this lender for the best rates. B, seek advice from an accountant before selecting a lender. C, contact other lenders in the area before contacting this lender. Or D, consider this lender disclosing the broker's interests and other lenders.
D.
Correct.
What you thought?
Can never lose. What you thought? A couple leased a waterfront bungalow. The lease began on June 15, 2010, and continued through July 31st, 2010. The couple had a tenancy at will, a tenancy by the entireties, an estate for years, or a holdover tenancy.
In the state for years.
Yup. A licensee anxious to make a sale violates his duties toward the principal of his volunteers, of which the following pieces of information to the prospective buyer. You should make him an offer for less than the listing price because the owner is anxious to sell. B. If anything in the contract is changed by my client, you have the option of accepting or rejecting the counteroffer. C. You can get your earnest money deposit back if the offer of financing is rejected. Or D. This house has been listed for 5 months and 10 days.
Hey.
Yup. Hello? An owner obtains a new mortgage on her house because the house has appreciated in value and she wants money for an investment. The new mortgage rate is 1% lower than the old rate. What is this process called? A. Refinancing. Correct. What you thought?
Hey, it's recorded, right?
Mm-hmm. An enforceable purchase agreement is formed when A. Both parties have orally accepted the agreement. B. The seller makes a counteroffer. C. The buyer knows the seller's written acceptance of the offer. Or D. The earnest money is paid.
Read the question again.
An enforceable purchase agreement is formed when A. Both parties have orally accepted the agreement. B. The seller makes a counteroffer. C. The buyer knows the seller's written acceptance of the offer. Or D.
C.
Correct. Which of the following is generally income tax deductible in home ownership? A. Down payment on the property. B. Major home improvements. C. Points paid to obtain the loan. Or D. Maintenance on the property.
Points paid to obtain the loan?
Mm-hmm. Which of the following is true concerning the Which of the following is true concerning the eminent domain? A. The property must be used solely for recreation. B. The property is taken through the process of condemnation.
Like there.
B. When a borrower defaults on a mortgage, an acceleration clause allows the lender the option of A. Attaching the borrower's personal property. B. Demanding immediate payment of the entire loan balance. C. Reporting the borrowers to both the FHA and the VA.
Demanding the entire loan balance.
Yep. An owner has been asked to grant a 60-day option to purchase a property. When should the purchase price be decided? Upon creating and signing of the option to purchase, at the closing, at the time during the 60-day option period, or D, within the last 10 business days of the 60-day option period. Yep. Which of the following is true about prepayment penalties on the VA or FHA loans for single-family dwellings?
It doesn't have prepayment and penalties. VA
Hmm?
doesn't have prepayment or FHA.
Yep. Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
When managing property, which of the following actions is legal? Refusing to rent to families with children, requiring a power of attorney from all prospective tenants, collecting larger Social Security deposits from prospective tenants with support animals, and D, obtaining information for prospective tenants to determine if they are financially able to afford the rent.
D.
Correct. The owner of a lot is interested in selling. The lot is 99 times. The lot is 99 times 110. If the similar property.
I'm skipping all the math questions.
Oh, my bad. A licensee is representing prospective buyers. The licensee orally informed the buyers that the developer would have been paving the streets in front of a house in a rural subdivision. The licensee had not verified this, but assumed that it was true because the developer had done the paving of similar subdivisions. The buyer relied on the licensee's statement in deciding to buy the house. If no contract exists, spelling out paving responsibilities, who can be held accountable for the damage? A, the developer, because it was the developer's responsibility to pave the streets up to existing arteries. B, the licensee, because he is unverified. Well, because his okay, let me start over. B, the licensee, because his unverified statement was misrepresentation. C, the county, because it has jurisdiction over roads in rural areas. D, no one, because no written promise of the street pavement was made by either the licensee or the developer.
Licensee,
Mm-hmm.
because he misrepresented,
Mm-hmm.
misinformed.
Yes, sir. Okay. Which of the following is a characteristic of a limited partner's role in a limited partnership? A, reduce personal liability and no management decision making.
Reduce personal liability, no management decision making.
Correct. For a real estate sales contract to be valid, it must include A, options, B, contingencies, C, consideration.
Consideration.
Correct.
Hey, make sure it's still recording.
It is. A home equity line of credit is for a 30-year term, a fully tax deductible, a secured loan, or available on rental property.
Say that again?
A home equity line of credit
It's a
is
secure loan.
okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
No, some Which of the following factors tends to increase the price residential real estate given in a given area? A zoning challenge allowing a group home. A large manufacturing plant opening in the city.
Large manufacturing plant opening in the city.
Correct.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Bobby,
Mm-mm.
I wouldn't care if I did.
A buyer made an offer on a property and the seller accepted the offer. A week later, the seller asked the licensee to amend the contract's provision for closing from 60 days to 90 days. The licensee completed the amendment and all the parties initiated the change. The buyer now asks if the seller would agree to split the cost of any needed repairs found during the home inspection. Which of the following should be prepared to include this provision?
Addendum.
Hmm?
An addendum.
Okay. 4 people bought an investment property together, each having an equal ownership interest. They took title in such a manner that if one died, he could leave it for 1/4 in interest to his heirs. How did they take the title to real estate?
Tenancy in common.
Oh, yeah. A seller agreed to list an older house on sale as an as-is basis. He told the licensee that if the roof leaked occasionally and that the plumbing and electrical systems were old and outdated, after signing the listing agreement, the seller had the house inspected for termites and rot damage. Both termite and rot damage were present, and the seller notified the licensee. If neither the seller nor the licensee told the buyer about the damage and the buyer personally inspected the property before closing, would the buyer be able to sue at the later date?
Yes.
Yes, why?
Let me hear.
Yes, because the damages were from more than one cause, or yes, because the licensee did not alert the buyer once he discovered the damage.
That's more, because the licensee did not alert the buyer.
A buyer has properly executed option with a seller to buy a property, which runs through September 15th. The buyer decides not to exercise the option. What should the seller do to terminate this option?
Nothing, it expired by itself.
Yep. The closing date is approaching on the sale of a property to a buyer who is represented by a licensee. Although the sellers have both signed the sales contract, the licensee learns that a relative of the sellers may have a title claim to this property. In this situation, the licensee should ignore the existence of the relative because if the title claim is not asserted before the closing, the buyer can experience no future title problems. B. Ask the listing licensee to advise the seller to contact an attorney to seek a quitclaim deed from the relative.
Yep, that's it. Right there. Right there. That one right there.
That one right there.
Second one right there.
The primary purpose of the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, RESPA, or RESPA, is to inform the buyers and sellers of all settlements, costs, and real estate transactions. B. Control the number of non-federally related mortgage loans in the country. C. Standardize the amount of Standardize the amount of all settlement costs and real estate closings. Or D. Standardize the settlement procedures in all the parts of the country.
Say it again.
Why did I?
Say it again.
The primary purpose of the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, RESPA, is to inform the buyers and sellers of all settlement costs.
Right there. That one right there.
Okay. Correct.
Cementos.
A person bought 3 lots for Under which of the following circumstances may a seller keep the earnest money deposit of a defaulting buyer? If the seller wants to declare the sales contract forfeited and there is no forfeit clause on the contract, if the seller wants to put the buyer on notice that the contract is being resigned.
The first one.
Oh, yep. A deed restriction of a subdivision created a community playground that uses a few square feet from the rear of every owner's lot. An owner has begun making plans to convert the rear half of his lot into a garden. The plans would require the removal of parking equipment. A neighbor objects to these plans. The neighbor should do nothing since an individual landowner has no authority to enforce deed restrictions. B. Apply for a court injunction against. Yep. An appraisal prepared using the amount of rent generated by the property is an example of which of the following approaches to value: cost, market data, square footage, or income. Correct. A licensee with the firm A has a listing from a seller with a commission rate of Which of the following best describes steering? A licensee sells a property to a family with 6 children in a predominantly older neighborhood. A lending institution refuses to lend mortgage money with certain areas due to the ethnic makeup of the area. Because of the prospect's national origin, an individual selling her own property advises the prospect of that property is sold when it is not. Or D, a licensee shows prospects of a particular race properties only in areas populated by families of the same race.
D. Is it still recorded?
I'm just stuck on the fact that that's the actual thing.
Yeah. Well, I was saying, you get into this.
When using the sales comparison approach, a licensee determines that a comparative property's title floor in the entry hall is worth $2,000. The subject property does not have the title floors at all. Which of the following adjustments should be made?
Just down.
Yep.
Comparable property.
An owner has accepted an offer. Another buyer approaches the licensee with an offer on the same property. The licensee should tell the second offerer that there is a contract on the property and that this offer cannot be presented. This offer will be presented and he will encourage the owner to cancel his existing contract. He will present this offer for consideration since the title has not been transferred. Or this offer can be presented as a backup offer only.
Backup offer only.
Yep. A real estate licensee was hired by a property management company to lease and manage commercial properties. Each commercial lease was different based on negotiations of the properties. Which of the following should the licensee do in this circumstance? Seek legal counsel to write or review the licensees. Prepare the leases as he is trained in the real estate. Fill in the blanks on pre-printed residential lease forms. Renegotiate the lease agreements so that they are the same.
Say it again.
A real estate licensee was hired by a property management company to lease and manage commercial properties. Each commercial lease was different based on the negotiation of the properties. Which of the following should the licensee do in this circumstance? Seek legal counsel to write or review the leases. Prepare the leases as he is.
Seek legal counsel.
Yep. On February 1st, a licensee with ABC Realty takes a 3-month exclusive right to sell a listing on a house. On March 1st, the licensee moves out of state and activates his license. What happens to this listing?
It goes back to ABC Reality.
Yep. A person brought property from a seller and received the general warranty deed. 2 years later, the seller's brother came forth and claimed he had ownership interest in the property. The brother stated he knew the court would uphold his interest. In a general warranty deed, the buyer is protected from this situation by the covenant of further assurance of ceasing against encumbrances or of special warranty. I should have recorded that. Yeah. What do special, general, and universal types of agencies have in common? They originate with the principal. They create ongoing work for the agent. They empower the agent to sign all contracts for the principal. Yep. Which of the following could be deducted as expenses from annual income taxes on an investment property? Making additional principal payments, replacing a roof, installing a new furnace, can't get it out, or painting a structure. Yep. A buyer has been pre-approved for a loan up to $300,000. The buyer plans to make a down payment of 20% on the property. The buyer will most likely apply for which of the following types of mortgage loans? Open-end, home equity, wraparound, or conventional?
Conventional.
A listing licensee has which of the following obligations to a buyer? Accounting, negotiation, honesty, or loyalty? Yep. A buyer is obtaining a construction loan of $95,000 for a single-family residence. Under the Truth in Lending Act, disclosure of a prepayment penalty by the lender is not required when the amount of the loan is less than $100,000. Not required for a business loan. Correct. Which of the following is a unilateral contract? An option, a lease, a purchase agreement, or an exclusive right to sell listing?
Option.
Yep. Which of the following is the purpose of a staked survey? Estimating the value of a property, determining assessed value, locating property boundaries, or evaluating markability of the title.
Is it located property values?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is?
Mm-hmm. A licensee was taking an upper bracket listing from a seller. The seller told her that they had lived in the neighborhood a long time, had many friends there, and wanted to be selective about who bought their house. The licensee was to tell them the race and nationality of anyone making an offer. How should the licensee respond to this requirement? She should refuse to do so by explaining she would not always know the people making the offer. She should refuse to do so and explain that the seller's instructions could be a violation of federal law. She could take the listing as it is legal as long as no discriminatory advertising is used. Or she could agree to it because the agent of the seller, the licensee, has the duty of obedience to the seller's instructions.
Say the question again.
The licensee was taking an upper bracket listing from a seller. The seller told her that they had lived in the neighborhood for a long time, had many friends there, and wanted to be selective about who bought their house. The licensee was to tell them that the race and nationality of anyone making an offer.
When was that?
52.
What? How much minutes you have left?
How many minutes?
On my phone. Look at the phone.
27 minutes.
Left?
I mean, it doesn't say left, it's counting up.
Okay. That's it for now.
Okay.